What is up, all you metalheads and metal fans out there? That frickin' metal guy here. Here, another question for all you metalheads. What is your favorite decade of heavy metal? Was it the 70s when it first got started, when heavy metal first started, when everything was new, when everything, I guess, wasn't as huge as it was in the next decade? You had bands like Black Sabbath, Judas Priest coming out, the two big bands coming out of the 70s, in my opinion. There's a lot of other bands. Those are my two favorite bands coming out of the 70s. And you had the 80s, where heavy metal was pretty much at its peak. If you didn't like heavy metal in the 80s, then I don't think you were that cool, because you had hair metal, glam metal, thrash metal, some death metal coming in there, some doom metal, a lot of more new wave of British heavy metal bands coming out there, such as Iron Maiden. You had Metallica, you had Slayer, you had Motley Crue, you had Guns N' Roses. I mean, this was the peak for heavy metal, where literally every band coming out either sounded the same or sounded different. Then you have the 90s, when you have a lot of alternative bands coming out, a lot of new metal bands, a lot of heavy bands coming out. You had bands like Pantera, getting into its groove, getting into what it's known as. It's not really known for their 80s stuff, it's more known for their 90s stuff. You had bands like, I don't know, 90s. God, I can't think of bands in the 90s. But you had bands in the 90s. I know. Then last decade, you had the decade of metalcore. Metalcore really came into the scene, really came into mainstream as well. You had bands like All That Remains, As I Die, and Killswitch. You also had bands like Five Finger Death Punch, Trivium came out. Trivium. And you have hard rock bands keeping it old, like old hard rock bands like Airborne, trying to keep it like AC/DC feel going. You had bands. You had old people from the 80s creating new bands like Kill Devil Hill, and a whole bunch of different things coming out in that decade, which, I don't know, I wasn't feeling that decade too much. I mean, a lot of bands came out of that last decade, but who knows? Maybe this decade, maybe like this decade so far, some new bands coming out, maybe. I don't know. But what is your favorite decade of heavy metal? Was it the 70s, 80s, 90s, last decade, whatever you call these decades? And let me know in the comments below. I'll see you guys later. Have a rockin' day.